Coming up on today's episode.
Church service is over.
But take into account your own personal life during your younger years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You follow things based on what was said to you by the church.
Yeah, that's because I was dumb back then.
You were a zombie. You still had a certain level of discernment, right? But a great deal of your discernment was developed by the church.
Yeah.
It's not until you left the church that you develop some individualistic type of.
You are absolutely right.
So that's all I'm saying.
Welcome to the Melanin Movement, where family, culture, and conversation collide. With your hosts, Kaya, Chris, E, Antoine, and last but not least, Shana. Now let's get into it. Hello one and all, and welcome to another episode of the Melanin Movement. I am Kaya, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, the Fan Bam. First in, we got Chris. Next in, we got Shauna Dawn. Next in, we got Antoine. And last but not least, where them fans at? Yvette. You did it on cue. So,
I gotta teach you how to clack it.
She's struggling right now. Seems like you're struggling.
I got it.
The struggle is real. I said the struggle is real.
You do not.
Oh, Father.
I'm just saying, you don't open it. It opens by itself. No. There's a difference.
Oh. Anyway, are you ready to embrace the beauty of family and culture? Welcome to the Melanin Movement and join us on this exciting journey filled with definitely laughter, love, and real stories from brothers, sisters, mothers, aunts, and nephews. Our diverse cast will share their unique experiences and celebrate the richness of our heritage. We want you to be a part of the conversation, so comment below with your favorite family moment and let us know what you feel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we take you on this adventure with us. Together, we'll create a powerful community. Now, speaking of community, some of the black delegate has been a little bothered by the fact that my bishop, Marvin Winans, has some choice words in one of his messages about the Greek life, fraternities and sororities. Take a look.
We're trying to bring the world in the church with all these kind of signs and all these kind of Greek mythologies. It's a lie, and if you in it, you on your way to hell. Now, ain't no need of you trying to come to talk to me afterwards. I don't care how many poor people you save. I don't care how many houses you build. If you are in something that has an allegiance other than Jesus, you're in a lie. Ain't no need. I don't care what bishop just crossed over. I don't care none of that stuff. I'ma stay with this book. Men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil.
All right, so now that you've seen that, can we delve into let me just start out by saying that even though I am no longer a part of the church, but Bishop Winans was my bishop, okay? And I love him, and he can do no wrong, and he sings down every chance he gets. So I want to start out by saying that. That's where I stand, okay? 10 toes and 2 heels down. That's where I stand. All right, so now that y'all have seen the clip, what do you think about those words?
So I feel like let's start with why there is such a thing called the Divine Nine. Back in the 1900s, when they were first formed, they were formed obviously because they weren't allowed in to the white frats and sororities. So this gave them their own space to help face systemic racism, and it gave them a sense of belonging. They were built to be of service to the community, to, bring on racial pride, make change, all that. And, so let's start there. My issue sometimes with the church, as someone who is born and raised, well, not born, but who was raised in the church and who does have a relationship with God, sometimes I feel like the church and our history, they feel like it can't exist at the same time. Because if you think about going way back to the Africa, when we came, we had things we did. That's a part of who we are. We didn't wear black for summer funeral. We wore white. We danced. We sang. We did things when there was a birth. We did the what's the thing, Kaya?
Rites of
The
passage.
the rites of passage, which meant we did certain rituals. It's a part of our history. But then we get in the church, which is white. It was based on what the white slave masters said. Then it's now who we were can exist at the same time if we love God. So that's where sometimes I feel like the church needs to understand that part, that you don't have to lose God and be the other part of you.
Um, Piggybacking off of what Sean has said and what Kaya has said, I love Pastor Winans down. His voice alone takes me through every single time. But in regards, right, but in regards to this thing about sororities and fraternities, one, um, like Shauna said, there's a history behind it. And a lot with the church sometimes, especially with the elders. We recently had this conversation, Kaya, that sometimes we feel as if, let's just say, even though he might have meant well, I don't like the delivery that he preached. And as Christians, trying to plant seeds in individuals, I don't think that was the time. Um, I don't think that was the way to do it. In a sense, if you have a message, I don't feel as if you have to beat it into someone to get the message. And I feel if that was a moment to invite souls to Christ, he probably could have turned people away because they probably aren't in fraternities, they probably aren't in sororities. And they're thinking that they're doing all of this charity work for people. I love the Lord, he heard my cry and everything. Pity every groan. And I'm sitting here coming to church, and then you're sitting here telling me I'm going to hell. First of all, I didn't know you could condemn me to hell. Because I could be in a sorority and a fraternity and get to the heavenly gates, and he would sit there and say, "Come in, my child." That's not your place to sit there and say you're going to hell or not, in my opinion. But I definitely think that it was just like it made me cringe a little bit. It made me cringe. And I love him down, but it was just like that's not the way to get people, to come to Christ. If you were trying to do that, if they just randomly came to your church on a Sunday, you could have missed somebody there just by doing that. So that's my take on that.
Okay.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong. I need to see the full. I didn't see the full sermon. I just saw the clip. So
Yeah, we
I'm
just
just
saw the
going off
clip.
of what I'm just going off of what was in the clip, and from what I seen from that clip, I was just like, he could have won somebody, but you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. I mean, I it's hard. I mean, I agree with both parties. Yvette and Shoshana said, um, it's just between you and God, where you gonna go. So at the end of the day, I mean, I maybe, like you said, the delivery could be off. I mean, they are. I mean, if you look back, like at certain words, we don't, or certain phrases, we somehow turn it to a whole new meaning for a lot of things. So like a lot of things that were racially said back in the days to black folks, we now reuse it as a sign of endearment. So it's kind of weird to be like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like, if do what you want to do, you know. God talk to you anyway. If you go to hell, you go to hell. If you go to heaven, you go to heaven. It is what it is.
Sorry, I was trying to find an excerpt from this book that I'm reading because I don't have the physical book in front of me. But it kind of spoke to the overall premise of what we're talking about, given that there needs to be a dialogue between conceptually, I'm going to use the word, but not specifically between unbelievers and believers, right? There needs to be a dialogue between the two. It's not to condemn the other party, but rather to, again, have discourse, right? So in the sense of, like Auntie Vet was saying, like Auntie was saying, in terms of you can have convictions, right? But it becomes dangerous when you then try to force your convictions on other people, right? You can still be an unbeliever and still be a morally and ethically good person, right? Because you don't believe the same things I believe does not discredit your ability to then be a morally sound person or ethically sound person. So from that perspective, I disagree, like Auntie Vet said, with the delivery of the message. Not to say that his convictions or his perceptions or his opinions were incorrect or wrong, but I think just the premise of allowing discourse to flow as opposed to forcing it onto somebody else is kind of where the danger lies, especially in today's society.
What was the name of that book?
Resistance, Rebellion, and Death by Albert Camus, French philosopher.
Oui.
Indeed. Indeed.
Well, I'm going to say this because I do agree with you all. However, I know that we've all been around certain Greekers, certain people that are part of the Greek life that literally OD.
I said, oh, for sure.
Yes. So we've all seen people that are, or doing whatever, and they will literally esteem their Greek brothers and sisters over their actual siblings.
But that's not.
Let me finish. Yeah, I'm and I'm sure Bishop Winans wasn't talking about everybody. But it's all a part of contextualizing the statements that he made. Now, a pastor is supposed to, share the good news, preach, and shepherd the flock. And sometimes the message may not come in the package that we want it to come in. And I'm not saying that he was correct in his delivery. But sometimes I remember back when Hidden Figures came out. Remember that movie? And Pharrell did the soundtrack and had Kim Burrell on the soundtrack. And a clip came out of her speaking to her church about homosexuality. And the next thing you know, Pharrell cut her off. She didn't sing with them live. It was just like, nope, because you said this and you said that. Now, could she have delivered it a different way? Maybe. But was she preaching from Bible? Yes. we can't sit up here and pick and choose the stuff that we want to, because every time you say something about certain things, then somebody be like, do you still eat pork? Yeah, nigga, like, you have an issue with one of the things, the commandments, or one of the things that you talk about in the Bible, and then somebody's rebuttal. You still eat pork? Are you eating shrimp and lobster? You still eat that? So why you got? You know what I'm saying?
But for that instance, you got to understand that was a business decision, because
No, I understand. I understand.
Like, we want this movie to do well, so we need you to stop with this to move forward. So again, sometimes we have to understand the dynamics. It doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't agree with her. It was just the business.
Well, no, Pharrell said he did not agree.
Well,
When he made his statement, he said he did not agree with what she was saying. And I'm sure that, because we know a lot of pastors and preachers and evangelists that are part of the Divine Nine. We know. One of the most notable one is Pastor Jamal Bryant.
My church always does fraternity and sorority service Sunday, where they wear their Greek life and their, my pastor is a part of fraternity and everything. I just think like how they say, oh, the police are bad. The police are bad. Not the police are bad. Some people in the police are bad. So I'm thinking, if you're taking on the fraternity and sorority to idolize something else other than God, then that's when it's just like, whoa, you're doing it. I'm not in sorority, so I don't fully know. But if I'm in the sorority and I know God is my savior, I know who I am in Christ, I go to church, I do my tithing and everything, but I also just want the sisterhood out of it, then why am I why am I being condemned to hell when I know who I worship? I'm not idolizing anything. I just want the sisterhood. I just want the Greek letters to get into a nice job or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just so it's just like, why is it like, it just
a lot of kind of like what Shauna was saying, a lot of believers, whether it be the leadership or the flock, try to separate who they are and who God made them with their belief and their walk with Christ. Like, you can't cut off the blackness and then cut off the blackness and then be like, oh, I don't care about the color. I'm just serving God. But no, you still have a heritage and a history that comes along with you. You still have cultural things that comes along with you. And God wouldn't have made you the way he did had he not thought that you were going to be able to do both. Both can be good at the same time. You can love God and still be black. You can love God and still, wear your Ankara fabrics and your galas and whatever. You can still be that. You can go to church. You can praise in the gala. You know what I'm saying? I know we've done that plenty of times.
There's this heavy metal song, and it's a gospel song, and it's heavy metal, and I play it when I go to the gym, and it's talking about Jesus and God and everything. It's just the artistry of what they're, I guess, how they're singing and whatever. But it's a whole gospel song. So
yeah, Chris,
you can use that.
Oh no, I was gonna say, Auntie touched upon this, and while you were speaking, you kind of brought this word up a couple of times too, in this idea of a dynamic and contextualization, right? So the things that you're speaking about exemplify individualism, right? And you also brought up this dynamic of a shepherd and a flock, right? It's very hard for a flock to exemplify individualistic tendencies if you're being led by something or somebody that's telling you to do something else. So take into account the church, right? We can all agree that things are a case-by-case scenario, right? Not all police are bad, but some police are bad, right? Not all pastors are doing this, but some pastors are. But at the same time, on a grand scheme of things, a pastor or a shepherd, so to speak, has a responsibility in their delivery because their flock will follow. So if you're saying that the Greek is this, you're saying that the Greek is that, your flock will act upon what you're saying because they trust in what you're saying because of your position, given that dynamic. So on a case-by-case scenario, we can agree, but specific to Bishop Winans and his delivery and his message, we may be able to extrapolate some details and say, all right, yes, it's a case-by-case scenario, but that audience in that moment probably took that and now has a different aggressive perception towards Greek life. They don't know about the Divine Nine. They're not thinking about the Divine Nine in church service. They're thinking of what Bishop Winans is saying.
I don't know if that is entirely true because of Pastor McClurkin, who is under Bishop Winans. My husband talks about this all the time, and he was talking about, he was coming from, I don't remember what scripture, and people was hooping and hollering, and he was just like, shut up. He said, y'all sitting up here hooping and hollering, but won't go home to fact check what I'm saying. Y'all won't go home to do your own research on what I'm saying. You won't open up the Bible to make sure what I'm saying is actually accurate. So, I also remember one time Bishop Winans came to the church, and we had started singing. The choir had started singing, and Pastor McClurkin, Donnie McClurkin, did not like the way we started that song. So he stopped us in front of the entire church. It was like, y'all ain't doing that today. No, start it over. What is that? We ain't gonna do that in this church. And Bishop Winans rebuked Donnie McClurkin from the pulpit in front of everybody. Now people could say, well, why would you rebuke the pastor in front of his congregation, in front of everybody? You should have took him behind the closed doors and did it, you know? So I'm saying that to say that a lot of times when you're in the church, yes, you have this pastor, this bishop, this prophet or whatever speaking, but you're not like zombies and like, oh, yes, we will do this after the church service is over.
But take into account your own personal life during your younger years, right? You follow things based on what was said to you by the church.
Yeah, that's because I was dumb back then.
You were a zombie. You still had a certain level of discernment, right? But a great deal of your discernment was developed by the church.
Yeah.
It's not until you left the church that you developed some individualistic type of
you are absolutely right.
So that's all I'm saying. I'm not
saying nothing but the truth.
Older, right? And God and was older to understand. I need to seek this
for myself.
I need to seek my own understanding, which is why I think this is a bigger discussion about the church itself and how, yes, we love God, and I do, but I'm still Black, so I'm still going to do what I need to do to make my community better. Let's go back. The civil rights movement started in the church.
Yeah.
So because
the church was at the forefront of change back in the back.
Because that was the safe space. That's where they could talk and plan without ears, without the FBI. Find out what they were doing. So again, I think the church, I'll never forget this. It was what's his name? Seymour. What was that? Is that his name?
Bishop Seymour?
He came to the church. Obviously, this is the
C. Wright. You talk about C. Wright? Okay.
I can't. No, it wasn't C. Wright.
Moles?
I said I can't think of the name.
I was trying to throw out names for you.
No, I know.
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help.
I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was 95, 96, and he was like, you can't save the Tupac Biggie generation with at the cross. He was like, God's word will stay the same, but you and your message needs to evolve with the time. And I think sometimes
That's it right there.
the the church sometimes doesn't evolve with the time. The word is always going to stay the same.
Ha! It will never change. It will never change. It will never lose its power.
But you have to evolve with the time, because what saved our grandmother, and then the songs that the slaves sang to them to keep their spirits up, and that isn't now.
Remember, and I was going to say this before Chris had brought up his point. Remember that when the Clark sisters came out with "You Brought the Sunshine,"
They thought
they was going to hell, allegedly.
with gasoline drawers on and a skateboard. And even now, people hate on Kirk Franklin so bad. I don't know if it's because of the tight suits and the suit jackets with no shirt on, but they be calling him the devil, demonic, and all of this stuff. And
he was in Jamaica doing a full concert, and they was mad because he had on the shorts and a vest, and they went off a tank top. And it was just like, how can he? He's just like, it's hot.
You want me to wear a robe? I'm burning up.
I mean, we all agree that he just wears stuff that he shouldn't wear, period.
He shops at Baby Gap. We know. He shops at Oshkosh B'gosh. We know.
You better not do that.
Criminal.
You better not do that to my Kirk.
But I love Mr. Franklin.
We're the victims. Really and truly, we're the victims.
He can't do no wrong. They was getting at Leandria for smoking with. She went out in the streets and she was smoking with who she was preaching to, and they were just upset. They was just like, "You shouldn't be smoking." She was just like, you gotta meet people where they at sometimes. So even if I just go over there, well, I don't agree with smoking, but even if I go over there and smoke with just to converse with them, I'm bringing them to Christ. Like, that's my intent. But even though it's wrong for sure, but it's just like it's just like,
But it's wrong because why? It's wrong because the pastor said it, because again, let's go back to the history of who we are as Black people. We burn sage.
Right.
The church think that's the devil to burn sage.
My husband does. He be like, we ain't gonna do that in this house. I be like,
what? You got the spirits conjuring up in here. The spirits
thinking I got a Ouija board in here. I be playing worship while I'm doing it. I open up the windows and any bad energy, bad spirits, I'm just like, y'all got to go. And I be praying while I do it.
I have an interesting question though. Speaking, because Auntie brought up a good point about the evolution of the message, right? So what becomes the distinction between an individual with a title, let's say a bishop, a pastor, and an individual who doesn't have the title, who's just delivering a message, but perhaps in a way that's not as bishoply or as pastoral? What would be the distinction between the two if the intent and the goal and the result is the same?
It's the same. Well, I can't even say one was groomed and ordained by God for that particular role. God ordains all of us to have whatever role that we have, or he gifts us whatever role that we have. So if I'm going to be now the town crier, and I'm going to go and be like, yo, Jesus is coming. Y'all better get it right. You see the signs is there. I'm just saying, get your house in order, as opposed to the leader who says that, but also is tasked with the role of not just giving you the message, but also counseling, but also making sure that everything within the parameters of the ministry runs the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to, what does a shepherd do? You're supposed to feed. You're supposed to, what?
Everything you're saying, though, right? You're saying that the distinction is, right, that, okay, one, if you're given a gift by God, right, like you're saying, we're not the ones to interpret that, right? The pastor or the bishop goes through some theological process or schooling of some sort, right, through people, right? That's not God, so to speak. That's a process here on earth that you go through schooling, right? So
yes, but also there's a word called rhema. Okay, go ahead.
Before you finish, or before I let you go, right? In the sense that you're saying being responsible for a ministry, right? Ministry doesn't necessarily have to be a bunch of people within a church building.
True.
We've seen people that give back to communities that have built ministry sources, that have given back without going through some type of theological process.
Of course.
Right. So again, what does the distinction become in that regard, right? Between a title of a pastor and a bishop and somebody who's doing God's work. But
authority, number one. Authority. That's the operative word here is authority.
Is that authority that person gives themselves, or is that authority that God gives them?
That both. Because there obviously are a lot of pastors that's just out there, like Bishop Whitehead, that is now in prison for embezzling money from his parishioners. But there are men and women of God that when I say the power and the hand of God is on their life and the mantle of God is on their life, that it is no denying. You can't even be like, oh, I think you need to be a lawyer or an accountant or something because this ain't your ministry. But when you see a man and woman of God that is operating in their calling, you know that is they are a leader. They are a shepherd. They are a phenomenal orator. Like it's just hands down. You know what I'm saying? They have a ministry of deliverance, all of that stuff. And the hand of God is on their life. Now, if you are operating as, one of the chosen, like Mary, when Jesus, after he, Father, Jesus, after he had came out of the tomb and he told Mary to go and tell them. And Mary was the one to go and tell the disciples, yo, he's risen. Where y'all at? Y'all over here. He over there. Let's go. So everybody has a role. So leaders, there's a distinction in a leader. And then there's this distinction in the town criers, the ones that are supposed to go and tell them, go and share the message, go and to the highways and byways and disseminate the message that you've not only been taught and told, because remember, Jesus was the rabbi. He was the one that taught the disciples. And then the disciples went and taught the flock. So after Jesus ascended, you got Peter, you got John, you got Mark, you got the disciples that went and furthered his ministry. And then Paul, who wasn't even born during the time that Jesus was alive, he was one of the greatest epistles of the Bible. You understand what I'm saying? But it's just a matter of, and I don't want to get too spiritual with it because then I'm just like, I'm losing the actual message. But there's a difference. I'm gonna just say that there's a difference.
I guess if I'm going off of what Chris is saying, in simpler terms, okay, everybody here could teach you something, right? We could all teach everybody something. But if we want to really know about something, we would go to a real teacher about that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think of bishops and pastors, like you said, Chris, they have to go through school. They have to go do training. They have to get their degree to preach. They have to do all of these things. And then the church usually appoints somebody to be or elects somebody to be the pastor of that church. So it's like everybody could teach you. I could teach you
That's in
something about the
some
Bible.
churches. That's in some churches.
Some
Yeah, 'cause
churches. But
other
one of
churches,
my
they
churches,
elect
we did.
themselves. Ain't nobody elected. Ain't nobody.
We
Yeah.
we do it like we electing everybody. But I think that's if that's what you're trying to ask, if that's what you're asking.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
I'm asking because I already have a answer in my head. To some degree, it's not an answer to say that there's an answer to a greater question, but rather kind of an answer that leads into a greater discussion, right? In the sense that you can have a pastor, you can have a leader. They're both leaders, right? But one goes through some theological process, like we said, right, to teach you rather about the texts that were present, right? In which case, we know at this point, I would think, that all of these texts are interpretations. Right? Those texts are not going to bring you to God, right? You can read the Bible every day and still have zero relationship with God. Two things can be true, right? But you can have a leader that may not speak like a pastor, that may not speak in the same oratorical fashion as a pastor, but his words may spiritually bring you closer to God. All right. So in this sense, I think the greater discussion is the disparity between spirituality and religion, which I think there's a clear distinction between, right? Religion is more of a hierarchical thing. It's a government, quite literally, right, within itself. The spiritual aspect may not always be existent within a church, and we know that to be true. But spirituality is something completely different. The church is not required to honor spirituality.
You're saying that, the text, obviously we know that the text was written by man. However, the text says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the what was with God, and the Word was God. So there's no way that you can be in the text and not be with God. Like it just
a church over here may have a different interpretation of that same text than a church over there. That's fact.
That's fact.
There's several different versions of that same text. That's fact.
Yeah.
So they're all interpretations. That's fact.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that's like saying you have a GPS, you use Waze, you use Google Maps, you use Apple Maps, but you still get into the destination. It takes you different ways, but you still get into the destination.
But that's not done through the text alone. Now you have to incorporate spirituality to supplement the text. The text does not bring you to God. The text does not garner spirituality. It's supplemental to building spirituality, which is my greater point in that church is not necessarily exclusively needed to bring you closer to God or to build a relationship with God. Hence the beginning of the conversation that led to, okay, individualism within a flock, right?
You're right in a sense, because you do not need, he also says when two or three are gathered. So we are the church. The church in itself is just a building. So wherever, I can have two people in the room and God is already there. So like you're saying, you do not need the physical building for sure, but religion, that I think more of going to service every day is religion, because religion is a routine. Spirituality is different, like how you said. So to point out, yeah, you are right. You don't need the building itself, but the building is just where everybody who is like-minded comes together and worship God. It's supposed to be where you go to get healed, where you go to feel the spirit, you feel the music and everything. It's just a place where everybody fellowships with one another to hear the word.
Of course.
But you do not need
the scripture
itself.
Yeah. The scripture mentions more than once about being in assembly and being with fellow worshipers. Like, you don't understand what I'm saying? So
right, but we spoke about context, or rather case-by-case scenarios, right? We know of these people that have gone to church for 20 years and still have not developed a strong relationship with God.
I don't know nobody.
We know of people that have been fellowshipping, right, with like-minded people. It doesn't necessarily mean that those like-minded people are sharing the right like mind.
Right, because there's demons in the church all the time.
Correct. So that's my point, right? That's my
Right.
greater point.
So I'm trying to think. I'm trying to understand what your ultimate point is regarding this situation, because I'm a little lost.
It's not necessarily an instantaneous or singular point, right? But more so, like I said, leading into a greater discussion between, and I led with this, the disparity between a pastor with a title, right, or a bishop with a title, and somebody who's doing the work of God who has no title. What's the disparity between the two? And again, that's not a singular point with a concrete answer, but rather a greater conversation.
Okay. Like,
because hold on, but like you said, right, building individualism within a flock, it's very hard to do. Very hard to do. And in the church, that's where that concept of a flock is hammered home, because you're following a shepherd. That shepherd may not always be the right shepherd. And you have to have discernment in order to realize that the shepherd is not the right shepherd. Not a lot of people do.
well, I mean, you can use the same premise when it comes to Greek life. Can't nobody have an individuality. When you on that line and you pledging, or you gonna do what the head honcho say, or you out. G5G, that's what, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just saying that because I know real Greekers don't like when you do they stuff. So I'm not even gonna do it. I'm gonna just stay with school days. But when Big Brother Almighty says to do something, you do it. There is no individuality. You may have your individual names that they give you, but if you stepping like they stepping. If you chanting, you chanting the same thing they chanting. You ain't saying nothing different. So, like Arsenio Hall said, things that make you go, So, Bishop Winans, I just want to close by saying that I love you. We love you. Yeah, well, I know me and Eve love you. You know. And one day I'm gonna make it down to Michigan and come to perfecting faith. One day. Sound funny?
No, I just thought the boys down in Detroit.
Oh, whether you're a Greeker and a Christian, or a Greeker and a Christian, you know, your path is your path, and your walk with God is your walk with God. Can't nobody on this earth, I don't care how great they can orate, can put you in heaven or hell. Now, they might lead you to heaven or hell, but can't nobody make you or send you there. Okay?
They can't make the decision for you.
Hello. Hi. So, on that note, go with God, Crispy.
Go with God, Crispy.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X. And make sure you go to our website and get our merch today.
I can take advantage of any situation if I'm allowed to. So to have that strong black woman to be like, you're not getting past this.
That's why you with Eve?
Unfortunately, I tell her this all the time. Yeah.
You want a disciplinarian?